Hello, this is Jaret Christinger and Cody Borman. We're doing our final project in interpersonal communications, and we chose to do our project presentation on nonverbal communication in the workplace. Something that we think is pretty important, and we'll explain why. Just examining the amount of time one spends at the workplace, we were pretty shocked once we put it down on paper and figured it out. But we started with about 50 weeks a year. That's affording 2 weeks vacation and 40 hours worked a week. That's considered full-time in America. Now, 50 weeks at 40 hours, that's 2,000 hours worked per year. Now, if one worked this job from, say, the age of 18 to 65, which is the standard retirement age in America, this will have amounted to working roughly 95,000 hours in one's lifetime. Now, considering that the statistic says that we spend about half our life sleeping, that's 95,000 hours would have to be a pretty close second. And considering that this is 95,000 hours spent around coworkers, around customers, around your boss, around the people that work for you, it adds up to really a lot of time spent interacting, period. Which brings us to chronemics, which is how we perceive and use time to define identities and interaction. Now, specifically in the workplace, this refers to punctuality. A huge emphasis is placed on punctuality in America, with all sorts of things being inferred when someone is late, that they're lazy, that they're unorganized, or that they could even be apathetic. They just don't care about the project they're working on or the job that they're working. And this isn't necessarily unique to American culture, but it is not necessarily shared in other cultures. In South America, for instance, they usually run in like blocks of time. So if the meeting is set at 12 o'clock, it's not uncommon for someone to show up closer to 12:30, and this is not seen as lazy or disrespectful or apathetic. This is just kind of the norm, and an example how cultures can vary greatly. Specifically in America, though, punctuality is related to one's status. So if we had a sliding scale, the higher one's status is, the more important their time is considered. Thus, a much less importance is placed on their punctuality. This is really evident most frequently in, say, going to the doctor's office or the dentist office. You could be 5-10 minutes early for your appointment that you've had made for weeks in advance, and yet you will still end up waiting 20 to 30 minutes every single time. Proxemics is another subset of nonverbal communication, which is especially useful when applied to the workspace, because it refers to our use of not only personal space, but the space around us. Now, in the space around us, that is typically dictated by the bosses, those who run the companies, hence cubicles. Okay, cubicles are kind of a trick that imply personal space, one's own area, when it is really just probably 3 flimsy walls in a giant room with dozens of other employees sharing their flimsy walled personal space. Kind of a nice illusion that gives the idea of one's own personal space. Once again, in America, on a sliding scale, one's status typically connotes how much space that person deserves or receives. Say on the lowest rung here, we have the office workers in their cubicles, but the higher you get, the manager has his own office, his manager has a bigger office with a window, his boss has, the top floor, all to himself. There is, once again, just a sliding scale of importance based on one's status. A color scheme is another big one. Huge use of proxemics, and we can see it evidenced here in school as well. The colors are all shades of white that have special names like eggshell and cream, but really it's put in place to have sort of a sterile, uncomfortable environment. Really, I mean, if the environment that you worked in was comfortable and safe feeling, it would kind of encourage sleep or possible things like you would want to just maybe hang out there. But the use of these colors and the small amount of personal space are put into place to encourage productivity and discourage distractions. This a sterile environment that what else is one going to do but work when they're there, because it's terrible and they want to leave, so they work faster and get done, and then they're gone. Now, the other application of proxemics is refers to our use of personal space. And there's a really, we stumbled upon this picture we thought was a really good evidence of it here. This is President Lyndon Baines Johnson, and he's discussing, or probably more appropriately, he's having a disagreement with a congressman. Now, LBJ would employ this use of proxemics whenever he was trying to kind of bully an opinion or a change of opinion, from like say a congressman. He would get up very close. He's got this forward kind of aggressive posture. His head is kind of leading. And then in response here, the congressman is kind of backing away. And really, just based on this, he's early on establishing kind of a dominance and aggression that it is clearly making this senator or congressman uncomfortable. Which, in kind of a segue to our next subset, is kinesics. This is an example. Here is a screen grab from the show Friends, and it's an example of when proxemics and kinesics meet and fail. Now, Chandler here is clearly pretty uncomfortable, and I'm kind of assuming the same position as this disembodied leg here, just to show you that really how uncomfortable it can make a person feel. I had a boss that would assume this posture, this situation here, whenever he was addressing these workers, and I think what he was aiming for was kind of a casual familiarity, but it really, maybe subconsciously with the leg up, or really consciously just in a kind of a creepy, imposing form, it really just made all of us feel uncomfortable, kind of as Chandler's feeling right here. But kinesics really refers to body position and body motion, including those of the face. The gestures of the face are mainly involve eye contact. Now, in America and Western cultures, eye contact is very highly valued. It implies that the speaker is sincere, direct, they're honest, that they're sure of what they're saying, and even with a listener, eye contact connotes an active listening and being very intent. Smiling is also a use of the motion of the face that relaxes people. Especially used at work. There's the old cliche that smiling is contagious. It truly is. If you're walking around work and everyone's smiling, you feel a little better, even if you don't know why. Now, this eye contact and smiling is really not seen the same the world over. In Japan, for instance, eye contact is seen as being much too direct, especially in the workplace. It's not necessarily disrespectful, but it's seen as being a little too blunt and forward, as not per their customs. Now, referring to body motions, and something you may have noticed I've been doing this whole presentation, is using gestures, particularly hand gestures. In Western culture, it's seen as kind of a tool to help one articulate and emphasize certain points. We have certain presidents that use hand motions to great effectiveness when emphasizing key points. And presidents have been using this for, keynote speakers. Huge hand gestures really connote an emphasis and a kind of a passion towards the subject. Once again, not seen the same way the world over. In most parts of Asia, gesturing with one's hands is kind of a sign of that one doesn't really know what they're talking about, that they're kind of floundering and they're using hand motions as a distraction because they're not comfortable or knowledgeable in their subject. But nonetheless, in America, it's still used pretty widely, as you can see. Now, kinesics has really, there's an individual that used this idea of positive kinesics in the workplace and really made a career out of it. That's why we have here. It pays to be polite. Now, this is an interesting story that we came across when we were researching this. This is Clint Greenleaf, and in the late 90s, Clint was going to school, going to college to be an accountant, and he was also training to be in the Marine Corps. Now, he has admitted, and his friends have also said, they can back him up on this, that he was not in attendance very much in college, probably a lot due to the training in the Marine, and his GPA, his grades were really, really subpar. I mean, not even the straight B's. I mean, he says that his GPA was pretty miserable. Nonetheless, it came time close to the end of their college careers, and they were going to go out and look for jobs, internships. And Clint picked the 6 biggest companies, his #1 picks, and was extremely adamant that he was going to go interview at these places. His friends kind of were pretty incredulous. They said, what makes you think that you can get a job here with your abysmal GPA and your poor attendance and everything? And he decided to go ahead and try it anyway. As it turns out, he received calls back from all 6 of the big companies that he applied at. His friends were baffled, and I mean, in a good way, and they wanted to know, like, what do you think, what made it? And they kind of encouraged him to write it down, and so that's what how this Attention to Detail, A Gentleman's Guide to Professional Appearance and Conduct came about. He ended up writing it out free form. It was about 20 pages. He printed it out at a Kinko's, and within a year, they had 10,000 orders. And in this book, he really talks about the reason that he succeeded in those interviews, completely independent of his resume, was his use of these things that we have talked about. He used eye contact. And active listening, maintaining the eye contact, nodding the head, really paying full attention with rapt attention. He had a firm handshake. A professional posture was very important, to sit there and be very attent and alert. He was also had a well-groomed, a neat appearance. It wasn't not expensive clothes that you're wearing, but you show that you put in the effort to be neat. And well-groomed. Now, these are all things that he learned training to be a Marine, and when correctly applied in the professional setting, clearly it pays out in spades. So this is just one example of someone who really puts forth kinesics. I mean, he made his whole career. Now he owns his own publishing company with a dozen books on the New York Times bestseller list. Yeah, really can really pay off. All right, well, that about wraps it up for us. We just wanted to say, on behalf of Cody as well, that we really enjoyed our class time. Thanks to all of our classmates. Thank you, Laurel. We really enjoyed spending time in class, and we hope you enjoyed our time spent in class, this presentation included. So yeah, with that, happy holidays, everybody. Thanks.